Hello everybody, welcome to my review of Maid of Sker. It's not like I didn't have anything else I could have been playing for you guys, but if you never voice your opinion, then it'll never be heard. I know I usually say it at the end, and I probably won't change that for this review, but just to reiterate, I need direction. If you want a game reviewed by me with the genuine qualities looked over, as well as the genuine terribleness inherent to garbage fires of some new games, you ought to ask why my channel is still young and small. Besides all of that, I'm also going to be starting a new series here on the channel, though still reviews, but more on that in the end. Now, on to the actual introduction to the review. Maid of Sker is the type of game that I have a lot of experience with. Running around and possibly being a big asshole with a bat to the shins on the occasion the game feels kind enough to give me a bat at all is something I'm used to. I'm saying it now because if I don't, then I'll probably catch flack for not being so positive with this game. However, I will still begin with the positives. While the formula is tired, Maid of Sker adds something new by using the surreal concept used in the movie The Quiet Place, aka it uses sound rather than sight. The basic loop goes around rather than being seen, being heard is the crux of which everything else arises. The gameplay loop, as previously stated, differentiates itself by the concept almost alone, however. The game wrong-foots you about its story, touched on later, until basically the very end. One of the biggest issues I have with this game is that it's so derivative from its contemporaries. There are clear influences from games like Outlast and, most obviously, Layers of Fear. The wrong footing, the gameplay for the most part, and even the twists are kind of derivative from Layers of Fear and its prequel, Inheritance. If you've not played those games, then you might genuinely have fun with Maid of Sker, but if you have, then you'll feel the pin marks of adjustments made to fit its little jigsaw puzzle. Maid of Sker, Layers of Fear, and Outlast follow this sort of pattern. First, the player character can't really fight back. For a while in the game, Thomas, the player character, has no way of fighting back against the monsters that aim to kill upon hearing him. After a while, though, roughly about halfway through, the game gives Thomas a means to fight back. Basically, a little metal ball that uses electricity to make an extremely high-pitched sound that the blinded enemies are more sensitive to. However, this usually only serves to stop them for fleeting moments. Second, it's a lot more focused on hiding because of the first point. The way that this comes into play is a mechanic wherein Thomas holds his breath and covers his mouth and nose to not be heard breathing. Usually, this takes form by holding your breath to inch past the enemies of this game. Third, they give a MacGuffin that usually changes as the game goes on. In Outlast, this takes a lot of forms, starting off with the security room, and then going into turn on the lights to get back to the security room, etc., etc. In Layers of Fear, it takes the few forms of the materials the main character uses to paint his final portrait. In Maid of Sker, the MacGuffin uses keys to get to blocked off rooms holding portions of a sonograph recording. These four recordings together supposedly counters the Song of the Siren, and would be able to turn the enemies back to normal people. This all segues into the next section of the review, which is the story. So if you plan on playing this game, you might want to skip ahead. The story follows Thomas, suitor to a young woman named Elizabeth Williams, as she is forced to take into her own hands the way of countering the siren song and enlisting Thomas's help after the fact. Thomas is the player character and comes by train to the Isle of Sker and ultimately walks into the Sker Hotel. The game usually acts like a walking simulator in the beginning, with the only normal interactions later being either between yourself and the enemies, or yourself in little wooden boxes holding the intercoms to talk to Elizabeth for guidance. She guides you through most of the floors of the hotel, along with her dog, Calliope, when you're outside of the walls of the hotel in the gardens or cemetery. As previously mentioned, you go through to find the MacGuffins through a way of keys to unlock each new room and therefore area to move on from. There are 4 keys in total, each ending up leading you slowly but surely to the 4 parts of the siren's song to input to the grand harmonium, essentially a large organ that plays the counter to the song when all 4 pieces are arranged. You also learn over time the gravity of the siren's song through notes from Elizabeth left throughout the hotel, and how it affects people through the sonographs that act as the game's save points. It turns out, Elizabeth's grandfather, Jebediah Williams, found the siren and managed to free himself of its song long enough to tie it down, using it as a part of a beacon to draw people into trade at Sker Point and later to Sker Hotel through his son's wife's singing. This is used to continually draw people in and build a cult of followers dedicated to keeping themselves only able to encounter each other through sound by lighting the rest of their senses on fire. How they sustain themselves is left a mystery, along with how they survive burns to their faces in majority portions that look to be at the very least 2nd degree, and a few other things. The story overall is interesting and well written to include an option to play the song yourself if you find enough of Elizabeth's diary entries and piece together that she herself isn't pieced together. In the end, however, the cult kills the siren, but only after recording its song for further use. I didn't want to play through it a second time to find out exactly what happened if you played it yourself, and the last paragraph that I was saying just a minute ago was essentially me taking an educated guess based on the information of the diary entries, as well as how to get to the option to say no and play it yourself to unlock. The visuals and audio are very effective at setting the right atmosphere in most places. Sometimes the enemies are a little thick, or the opposite, too hard to effectively handle. But otherwise, it all makes use of tension, and the visual style of the enemies is effective in realizing it might be a cult before or long before that's revealed. The nature of it all kind of destroys itself in the end, however, as the siren is killed by the cult and Thomas taking the last shot on the siren. With a harpoon, no less. The end credits use each of the songs used in the game very effectively, however, making it likely that I might return after a while to try that second playthrough that I was talking about earlier. To summarize all of this into a neat little tidbit for you, it's an altogether formulaic game, taking after games like Layers of Fear, but no less deserving of your attention if you're okay with pressing on regardless of its more derivative elements from those other games. The gameplay is interesting in the way it's styled and makes it stand out on its own 2 feet a bit more, but if you're not willing to look past the derivative elements and some of the glaring issues, it'll feel a bit tedious to you. Hey everybody, sorry the other portions of this video were a mix of long and short, but I've had a rough spot the past couple of months, and this was the first game in a while that I completed within the 10 hours on stream like I did with Doom. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I need direction. I want you to give it some thought before you comment, sure, but if you have your own suggestion for the next review, then the only way to make it known is by commenting below. If you're new here, check out some of the other reviews, and maybe if you like them, then come by and see my streams so you know how I experienced the games, as well as how experienced I am with games of all sorts. I pride myself in my variety and refuse to do the same game twice, review-wise, but if I haven't done it, then I can do what you ask. If you happen to come across this video by accident rather than the places I usually share these to, maybe take a chance and subscribe. Besides that, going back to the introduction paragraph, I do want to mention that I have a new series in the works. I'm planning on titling it something close to the games or the best games of my life. Essentially going back to the year I was born, 2001, for those of you who don't know, and playing the top 5 or possibly top 10 games on Metacritic for each year, and essentially putting them all into a list together on my own rating system. So then you have more of a feel of how what is considered the best games by other reviewers would be rated by me. Though, not sure that I'm going to be keeping to that rating system idea. Anyways, this has been Canuscio from 10 for 10 Reviews, checking out and wanting to see you next time.